Hello, guys. So it is the pre-game show on a Sunday, and me and Jay doing things a little bit differently this week, just because unfortunately our schedules didn't match up, and that is largely my fault. Um, Due to my parents buying me tickets for a Sunderland game, which is the football team that I support. How are the lads? And unfortunately, that goes over our usual shooting slot. So we're gonna do it this way, which is kind of fun because. Um, I haven't seen what Jay's picked at all, and Jay won't see. Jay's already recorded his video, so hasn't seen what I've picked. So this could be interesting. We could be totally different, and you get to see a bit of a view into what happens when we just don't talk to each other. But most of the time, we don't really talk to each other about picks and stuff before the shows anyway. So yeah, let's just get into it. It's good to see you guys, and it's going to be fun to go solo for today. And I hope me and Jay marry up on some picks, but realistically, we could be quite different here. So let's head to our first game. So our first game is the Denver Broncos versus the Miami Dolphins. And one of my favorite stats about this Broncos team was mentioned by Shalif. Is that his name? Shalif, who was on the Colin Cowherd show, former Broncos offensive lineman, does a show in Denver. And he says that the Denver Broncos have a defensive issue, not an offensive issue. In the game, in one of the games that they recently played, they only had 8 picks in the second half. 8 possessions in the second half of the game. So how are they meant to score points? How is Russell Wilson meant to score points? And in the last game, they're actually, if you look at their points per drive, they're one of the highest scoring offenses in terms of points per drive when they've actually got the ball. So although there are things to blame Russell Wilson for, and the fact that when they did get the opportunity to score points against the Commanders, they didn't do that in the second half. They still have the highest point. So let's stop bagging on Russell Wilson entirely. This is a defensive issue. However, looking into today's game, the team that they're playing is the Miami Dolphins. And as me and Jay like to say, Mike McDaniel's Miami Dolphins have reinvented the theory of you don't get Alabama open in the NFL. You don't get Alabama open. You now get Miami open. And when you've got Tyreek Hill, when you've got Jalen Waddle on this team, and Tua spreading the ball around, Mike McDaniel in the coaching room, they look impossible to keep up with. They look really, really, really difficult to keep up with. The betting line is -6. Give me the -6 in that betting line. So I'll take the Miami Dolphins at -6. Dolphins at home as well, which actually could mean which means they would think it's only a 3-point game if it was in Denver, but I don't. I think that's actually quite a small spread with the Dolphins at home. So -6 with that stellar Dolphins offensive performance, and the fact that the Broncos defense is living off the reputation of being a good defense, but is not actually a good defense, and it's not really the offense is a problem. And with that in mind, the over-under is 47.5, which is actually quite an interesting over-under. 47.5 feels like quite a high scoring game there, but I'm going to take the 47.5 because I think the Dolphins against this Broncos defense are good for 30, maybe good for 35. And I think the Broncos are always good for 20 as well. So I could see it being a 50-point game, maybe 35-21, something like that. And the Dolphins team are real, but their defense has some holes in. The Chargers put loads of massive points on them. I think a big part of this Dolphins going to the Super Bowl thing is, will Jalen Ramsey be back for the playoffs? And I'm not sure on that. His injury is pretty serious, but they could use him back for the playoffs if they need him, because they're defensively, they look weak, but they're so stellar offensively that give me the -6 in that one. Okay, moving on to the Buffalo Bills versus the Washington Commanders. Buffalo making a big comeback last week, and good for Josh Allen. You know what kind of me and Jay say about Josh Allen in these kind of things, and how he's just Dak Prescott or Kirk Cousins. His stats say the same. Everybody talks about Dak Prescott having this turnover issue. Dak Prescott had a turnover issue for 1 year in the NFL. He's had 1 year of turnover problems. Josh Allen has had a turnover issue as long as Brian Daboll isn't his coach since he gets into the NFL. But he showed that he was able to play the game that they needed him to play. Last week, he played really well, distributing the ball around and then just playing his cannon arm whenever he needed to. In that victory last week against the Raiders, 36 points to 10. However, the Commanders' defense is for real. Everybody's talking about the Cowboys and 49ers defenses, which we should be talking about. They're excellent defenses. But actually, if you look at the stats, the Washington Commanders are first in sacks, first in QB hits, first in QB pressures, as well. And they have the ability to take the ball away. So it'll be interesting to see how that Buffalo Bills offensive line deals with the defensive line. This is going to be one in the trenches this week. Sam Howell also makes some pretty big plays in the second half of that game against Denver last week. So the Bills -5. I'm going to take the Washington Commanders +5.5 is the betting line that I'm going to take, but I think the Bills are going to win by 3 points. So I think the Bills are going to win, but give me the Washington Commanders for the betting line at 5.5. The over-under is 42.5. I think this game is going to be won in the trenches. I don't think it's going to be a particularly high-scoring game. However, 42 points. I wouldn't personally bet on a 42.5 point in this game, but give me the over on 42.5 points. Okay, we now move on to a game that I'm not sure, this is probably our game where not very many people are going to watch outside of these two fan bases, but the Houston Texans are playing the Jacksonville Jaguars this week. CJ Stroud looked good last week. I mean, he was impressive, threw for 300 yards last week, was it? When he was playing last week. And Jacksonville's red zone offense does not look good. Trevor Lawrence didn't play the kind of game. Yeah, CJ Stroud threw for 384 yards last week. Dameon Pierce is killing Jay in fantasy football this week because he only ran for 31 yards on 15 carries. Wow. Okay. So looking into the Texans Jaguars, we have the poor red zone offense of the Jaguars. That was the time to beat the Chiefs. If the Jags were going to beat the Chiefs, then they should have done it last week. Trevor Lawrence didn't look great. They only scored 9 points. On the other hand, the Texans were playing the Colts and the Jags were playing the Chiefs. So very different levels of opponents there. The spread is 7.5 to the Jags. Okay. The 7.5 to the Jags. Give me the Jags at 7.5. I think they will bounce back this week. I think the Texans again have got pieces, and offensively, I love their receiving core. Nico Collins looks like he could be a breakout wide receiver 1 this year. I'm glad I have him in my fantasy team. Just saying. You also have the ability of Dameon Pierce in the backfield, who I doubt he's only going to be running for 31 yards. The guy runs so hard throughout the season. But you've also got Robert Woods and Tank Dell, who was actually their leading targets last week. He got targeted 10 times. Nico Collins got targeted 9 times last week. But Tank Dell was one of my favorite players coming out of the draft. PFF love him as well. And then obviously Robert Woods is not like Robert Woods, where he looks like one of the best wide receivers in the league, but he is looking better than he did last year. And then Dalton Schultz as well, who former Cowboy, an excellent wide receiving option. So don't be surprised if the Texans start putting up points in games this year. However, I think they're overmatched on the defensive side of the ball. The Jags have got, again, they've got a great wide receiver, and they've got Trevor Lawrence and a QB as well. So 7.5, over under 43.5. Give me the over at 43.5 in that game. I could see it being a very high scoring game. Okay, moving on to the Atlanta Falcons and the Detroit Lions. And I think at the start of the year, Detroit will be very, very unhappy if they saw they were only favored by 3 points. The fact they're only favored by 3 points after beating the Chiefs at the start of the season, let's remember, they would be very upset about that. And I think it does have something to do with the fact that they had a overtime loss against the Seahawks last week in in a close game for them. But the Seahawks are a good team. Man. But is it more to do with the Falcons' excellent start to the season? So the Falcons have had a brilliant start to the season, and they play a brand of football that is controlling the clock, controlling play, making the most of Desmond Ridder, although Desmond Ridder is not necessarily the QB. If Desmond Ridder was my QB, I'd be looking elsewhere. But you have the Falcons' excellent start to the season with their running game. They control the clock. This is actually because you get 3 points if you're at home. Vegas is calling this a wash on neutral field. I find that crazy to me. Give me the Detroit Lions -3. They've been putting on mad points whenever they've played games this year. And the Falcons' defense, although improved, I don't think can live with it. The Falcons, their way to win is just control the ball, control the run. I can see it being a low-scoring game. I can see the Lions winning by 7. Over-under of 46.5 is probably going to be about 46, to be honest. So give me the under. Give me the under. Like 40 to 46.5 points. I'm comfortable with. Give me the under on 46.5. Okay. Moving on to the Indianapolis Colts versus the Baltimore Ravens. This is a -8 game, -8 spread towards the Baltimore Ravens. The Colts have looked decent this year. Anthony Richardson is exactly who we think Anthony Richardson is. People are getting a bit overexcited because he's just proving exactly what he thought he would be. He doesn't read the game particularly well. He throws high and he's quite inaccurate, but is one of the best athletes on the field. He gives the Colts a high floor on their offense, but also at the moment and the way he plays, quite a low ceiling as well. But their offensive line, everybody was writing off last year. Their offensive line was terrible, but when you have that many great players on one offensive line, you're not expecting it to continue to be bad year in, year out. So they're playing well this year. They've got their run game going, but Baltimore haven't looked as good as I think everybody kind of hoped they would. I know some people had them as their pick to go to the Super Bowl, but saying that, they've beat the Bengals, but they scored 27 points on the Bengals last week, and they look like they got everything going. And they've also scored 25 points on the Texans. And we think the Texans are a little bit better than we gave them credit for at the start of the year. Lamar Jackson went 24 for 33 for 237 yards with 2 touchdowns last week. Nelson Aguilar looks like a good pickup and a good weapon. Gus Edwards, always when he's out there, looks like a solid running back when he's actually healthy. They also ran for 178 yards on the ground against the Bengals, so they're able to control the clock as well. So yes, the Colts have a good run game, but the Baltimore Ravens have the best running quarterback in the league right now because he's also able to throw. So he makes you take guys out of the. So as soon as you take guys out of the box, you have to throw. He can run the ball. As soon as you put guys in the box, he can throw the ball. As soon as you take them out, he can run the ball as well. So -8 feels like a big spread more than a touchdown, but give me the -8 for the Baltimore Ravens, I think, on that one. And I'm going to take the over on 43.5 points. Okay, so before we move on to this next game, the over-under is 54 points. So that tells you what we think. What Vegas thinks about these two teams is defense. At 54 points over-under, and it's the Minnesota Vikings and the Los Angeles Chargers. So the Vikings are favored by -1 at home, which will make the Chargers a 2-point favorite on a neutral field. The fact that this is a game that I bet the Vikings wish they took the roof off and were playing outside, to be perfectly honest. Like in a dome, the Chargers offense is going to be legit, and the Vikings defense, sorry, Jay, is an issue. You have a defensive issue. Hopefully the defense can get it on. And I feel like the Vikings have been unfairly judged this early in the season. What they have a problem in is a turnover problem. So, and the turnovers are a fumble problem. Now, fumbles are easy to correct. Just hold on to the fucking ball. Just wrap around the ball. There's not many players who have a fumble issue. I'm happy that it's not Kirk Cousins with a interception issue. Kirk Cousins has probably been the best quarterback in the league in terms of stats, definitely the best quarterback in the league so far this year. Um, and the Chargers have an even bigger defensive issue, hence why the over-under is 54 points. The Chargers better hope that they get blown out in this game and they get just cause to sack Brandon Staley. Brandon Staley is not doing it for you when you're a defensive coach for a team and you have an over-under of 54 points, but you're only meant to be winning. The difference is going to be 1 point. You know that your defense isn't playing very well. So give me the Vikings in this game. I think they make a big bounce back here. I think they just, as long as they hold on to the football and don't fumble it, then I think uh, they've got the win here. And give me the Vikings -1. Give me the under on 25. It's a crazy bet to bet the over on that one. I think the Vikings defense could be a bit more stout this year, be a bit more stout in this game. And I think they'll play more of a, because they know their defense is having issues. I think they have the Vikings have the ability, as long as they hold on to the ball, to play more complementary football. So the defense has been put on the back foot because of the amount of turnovers so far this year. I think if they stop the turnovers, the defense gets more time off the field. They're not putting as bad situations. So give me the under. I think the Vikings defense will stand stronger. And I think the Chargers are just going to be the Chargers and they don't have the winning element in their body for a close game. And I think we could see the end of Brandon Staley by maybe week 5. Okay, moving on to a game now, which would have been very different if certain events didn't occur, but we have the New England Patriots against the New York Jets. It would have been Aaron Rodgers playing against Bill Belichick's defense in division, which everybody was very excited about. But now, unfortunately, we do not have that matchup. What we do have is Zach Wilson going against the New England Patriots defensive line. The Patriots are favored by -3. The over-under is 35. That is a very low over-under, but actually, weirdly, give me the under on 35. I think the Patriots will probably play some complementary football. Mac Jones has looked decent. Mac Jones, as always, looks pretty decent. Top 20 quarterback, probably in the range of 20 to 15 top quarterbacks in the NFL. With more weapons, he'd be a better quarterback. And I think Bill Belichick and his defensive scheme is enough to throw Zach Wilson off. I don't think Zach Wilson played terribly against the Cowboys. I think he had no time to throw, but that Jets offensive line is just gonna bury him. The Jets need to, if they go behind, they need to make sure they continue to run the ball. Run the ball with Breece Hall. He's actually probably your biggest bet to pull off big plays. So they only ran Breece Hall for 4 carries for 9 yards against the Cowboys because they went behind. They need to stick with their run game against the Patriots because I doubt the Patriots are going to get away from them. I'm actually going to switch my pick here. I'm going to take the Jets. I'm going to take the Jets at +3 because I think they should run the ball. I think if they can run the ball on Bill Belichick's, defense. I think they've only lost to a good Cowboys team. Like they beat the Bills because they ran the ball. So Jets run the ball. I'm going to take them +3, and I'm still going to take the under at 35 points. That's my upset pick of the week, I guess. How exciting. Okay, the Cleveland Browns versus the Tennessee Titans. Now, you all know what I feel about Deshaun Watson. If you go watch our last YouTube video, you can see our feelings of Deshaun Watson. And in my opinion, he is washed. He is the problem in Cleveland and will remain to be the problem forever because to cut him now would cost them $200 million. The cap is $240 million. That's where they're at with that Deshaun Watson contract. They're favored by -3 points. Nick Chubb is out for the year, whereas the Tennessee Titans have their healthy team. They have Derrick Henry in the backfield as well. They have Ryan Tannehill, who's probably honestly playing on a par with Deshaun Watson as well. And most importantly, they have Mike Vrabel, whereas the Cleveland Browns have Kevin Stefanski. Now, I was a big fan of Kevin Stefanski when he first came into Cleveland, but I think what he did to Baker Mayfield is now biting him in the arse because Baker Mayfield does look good. In this game, They could barely move the ball against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, which the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is not awful, but it's very much living off the idea of like, oh yeah, tough Pittsburgh defense, like living off past glory. So I don't think they're as good as everybody makes them out to be. I'm going to take the Titans in +3 in this game, and I'm going to take the under of 37.5 on this game as well. Well, bit of a boring week for me. I'm kind of getting on with the vibe of offense takes a while to click in the NFL. So we're still waiting for offenses to click. We'll start seeing some overs soon. If you haven't already, please make sure to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. Go follow us on Rumble if that's where you like to digest your content as well. And make sure to go follow us on Instagram, where we now have 30,000 followers. That's so crazy to me. 30,000 followers. Thank you to everybody who follows us. And thank you to our nearly 500 subscribers on YouTube as well. Okay. Moving on to our next game, we have the New Orleans Saints against the Green Bay Packers. And that's -1.5 as a favorite to the Green Bay Packers. Now, Derek Carr hasn't looked good in his first games for the New Orleans Saints, but the New Orleans Saints have weapons. And I do think that players like Chris Olave and the fact that they have Michael Thomas as well, that's probably one of the most underrated receiving tandems in the league, right? There's some other strong contenders for that. Jordan Love has looked good without answering really any questions about him, to be honest. In the NFL, he doesn't look like he plays. It almost looks like the big stage gets to him. Like in the game against the Falcons, it looked like the stage got to him last week, where he's putting up the stats, but he's not putting in the winning plays. So for me, I'm going to take the New Orleans Saints plus 1.5 here. I'm going to take the over at 41.5 because I think the Saints have got more weapons than people are giving them credit for. And I think their defense is legit. I really do think their defense is going to cause Jordan Love some serious problems. Okay, moving on to the evening slate. Also, why is there only 3 games in the evening slate? That makes no sense. They need a 4th game in the evening slate. We've got a 2-packed afternoon slate at 6 p.m. here. Sorry, you guys don't call it the... For us in the UK, we have the 6 p.m. slate and the 9 to 9:25 slate of games. So for me, this is the 9 p.m. slate, the evening slate for us over here. And I'm going to start with the Carolina Panthers versus the Seattle Seahawks. And I think this spread is a massive disrespect to the Seattle Seahawks. So far, they beat a Detroit team that beat the Chiefs, and the Detroit team that is favored to win their division. Remember, whether Jay agrees with it or not, but the Detroit team have a legit offensive side of the ball and they have a legit defensive side of the ball. The whole question in Detroit is culture. So they beat that Detroit team and they lost to a Rams team who had the 49ers within 7 points, and everybody thinks that the 49ers are the best team in the NFC, even though it's clearly so far the Cowboys. Based on play, the Cowboys are 70 points to 10 is what they've put up in games, but that's fine. That's fine. Remember, we beat the Giants 40 points to 0 while the Giants had Saquon Barkley on the left tackle, but the 49ers beat them by 30 points to 12, and the Cowboys haven't played any real teams yet, apparently, whereas the 49ers have played the Giants and beat them 30 points to 12, so they're unstoppable. But never mind. But let's remember that the Seattle Seahawks lost to that Rams team as well, who drove the 49ers close. So let's cut them some slack. Whereas the Panthers, they haven't looked good. They don't have any offensive weapons. Breece Hall is hurt. Let's get an update on if Bryce Young is playing. He's missed practice, not expected to play, so they're starting Andy Dalton, and I do like Andy Dalton, and I weirdly think Andy Dalton actually makes them more favorites. Weirdly, as I'm talking, the betting line has changed. The Seahawks have now gone up to -5. Quickly, guys, get your bets in for this game because the money line is changing on this game. So I'm going to take the Seahawks at -5 as well. I think this is a massive disrespect. They win by at least. 10 points, I think, in this game. The over under of 42.5. I could see it being 30 points to 10. Give me the under. I don't think the Panthers are going to move the ball. Pete Carroll's got that Seahawks team playing with energy and zip now. Okay, our penultimate game now of the day. We have the Dallas Cowboys against the Arizona Cardinals, and the spread is -13. Now, the Cardinals did look good at points against the Giants, but again, the Giants are not a great football team. Let's just put it that way. They had to make a massive comeback, and the fact that the Cardinals allowed them to make that massive comeback, does that not shed even a further light on the Cardinals are probably tanking? Like, I'm not saying that they conspired to lose the game on purpose, like by no means, but that they look like they may be tanking. But they didn't lose the game on purpose. That's not what I'm saying. I think the Dallas Cowboys defensive line has way too much for the Arizona Cardinals offensive line to deal with. Sacks, turnovers. Unfortunately, Trayvon Diggs is out, which takes a bit of X factor away. But I do like the depth that we have at corner now, which is an interesting thing to say as a Cowboys fan because that never happens. -13 is a huge spread. I probably wouldn't bet on this game if I was you, but I'm going to say I'm going to take the Cowboys a -13, a huge spread though. So I'm not sure I would bet on that game. But -13 is still what I'm going to pick. I think the Cowboys are going to beat them. The Cowboys could realistically put up 40 points on the Cardinals defense, especially if they get a defensive touchdown as well. I think this could be the game where Dak and Tony Pollard and CeeDee Lamb all come really good. And again, just playing risk-free football. Let's remember when we're talking about the Cowboys offense and what we're saying about Dak Prescott, they've just played completely risk-free football so far this year. There has been no need for them to take any risk. So when we're saying they look dull, he's not passing for loads of yards, he's just relying on the run game, it's because they're playing football to win, risk-free football. This is what I feel really weird standing up for Mike McCarthy, but weirdly, he's kind of showing himself right this year so far, is that Kellen Moore didn't play football to win. He played football to put up points and all of that kind of stuff. And that shows in the stats, but it also shows in the turnovers and the playoff game results. Whereas Mike McCarthy is calling games to win games. Risk-free football. Okay, and then finally we have not finally. Sorry. It's when you're in the UK that the final game of the day. So the Steelers Raiders game is tomorrow because it's 1:20 in the morning. So sorry, I got confused. But this is the penultimate game. Sorry, we have the Chicago Bears versus the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chicago Bears with their defensive coordinator now being investigated by the FBI. Eberflus is now taking over defensive coordinator calls, which, I mean, what else does that guy do? When you're a defensive coach in the NFL and you have an awful defense, you would have thought he would have took over play calling ages ago anyway to try and save his job. They have 2 sacks in the first 2 weeks in the first 2 games of the season. However, they are going against the Chiefs team where we have serious questions about the wide receiver room. Their defense is excellent, and they're going against Justin Fields. Justin Fields coming out and speaking in the media. Again, go watch our last YouTube video if you want to see more of our opinions on that, because obviously me and Jay talk Justin Fields a lot. But Justin Fields talking in the media, I think he's going to try and take over this game. I think he's just going to run the fucking ball because they haven't been running him at all. Just run the ball, Justin Fields. Just pull it down, run the ball. Chris Sims does have an interesting point, though, as there are guys kind of open downfield that he chooses not to throw to because he pulls the ball and runs straight away. But either have confidence in your arm, Justin Fields, and just fling the ball and see what happens, or run the ball, and run the ball. The Chiefs defense looks electric. I think Vegas hasn't picked up on the fact that the Chiefs offense is the problem yet, because they're favored by -12.5, which is quite a big spread for this Chiefs team so far, considering their results and the fact that they scored 17 points. They managed to get a win, scoring only 17 points last week. But an over-under of 48 points. So I am going to take the Chiefs to beat the Bears by -12.5. I, again, wouldn't bet on this game. The spread is too big, but -12.5, okay, give me that for the Chiefs because the Bears are in turmoil. But give me the under on 48 points. Now, that is something I would bet on, the under of 48 points because the Chiefs' defense is what's keeping them together and their offense doesn't move the ball. Give me the 48. Give me the under on 48 points. Okay. Final game of this weird show where it's just me talking right now. And I don't know if Jay's agreeing with me. Normally he holds me in check of some of my more outlandish takes and things like that. But I've got the Steelers versus the Raiders, and the Raiders are -3. The Steelers can't move the ball. Kenny Pickett. I like Kenny Pickett, but Matt Canada is horrendous, and I would fire him pretty much straight away. However, they do have a decent defense. I mean, I think they're living off former glories, but they do have TJ Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick and those kind of standard of players as well. But the Raiders have far too many weapons. The money line has just changed. Some money is being bet on the Steelers clearly, so it is now -2.5. Give me the Raiders at -2.5 and the over under of 43 points. Give me the over on 43 because I think this could be the game where the Raiders put up big points. Thank you so much, guys. Cheers for watching my little segment of this. And I hope you enjoyed Jay's segment, and I hope he hasn't ripped me. He hasn't disagreed with me too much. If you enjoyed that, please like, subscribe, comment, all of that stuff. Cheers, guys. Thank you so much.